Finally, the Toronto Raptors. Speaking of panic meters that I didn't see us having to gauge, I guess, at any point this season, someone had asked and on YouTube whether the Toronto Raptors should blow it up. We did it in a mailbag. Both Grant and I came out here preaching patience, caution, saying it was too soon. We both look a little bit foolish now, and I certainly feel a little bit foolish for dismissing the notion that they would ever do it. I'm still not convinced that they will do it. Let me make that clear. But like they have earned like the talk of, oh, are they going to blow it up? They've absolutely earned that. They lost another game on Monday night to the Philadelphia 76ers. It was at least close, but then now makes 6 straight. And the pathway to this team, yeah, you could point to some absences. They're 2-9 though over their last 11, and like OG Anunoby missed some of that time. Pascal Siakam played all of those games, but he was working his way back from, I think it was an adductor injury, or is that OG had an adductor injury? They both have an adductor injury. I can't keep up with all these injuries. I do try my best there though. So like, yeah, you've dealt with some absences, like getting nothing from Otto Porter this year. Like that has to really hurt. But this 11-game stretch has sort of been a microcosm of all the issues that we were worried about manifesting into one just giant shitstorm for this team. And I think it's fair now to wonder, well, should they go a different direction here? They are, during this 11-game stretch, actually better when I was looking at it, because watching them, you wouldn't think that. They were 18th in offensive efficiency. That was shocking. 22nd in defense. Their half court offense, it's a mess. It's just a mess. They are, during this stretch, they're 24th, but they're 29th in half court offense on the season. They're not like they can still get some second chance points, but like during this stretch, they haven't been getting a crap ton of them. And so when you're relying on that, and then you're all of a sudden, okay, you're still really relying on transition, and you've been okay in transition during this stretch, how are you going to generate your half court offense though? Like you can get out in transition, but if you're not going to be able to have a more dynamic half court offense aside from let's rebound our own misses and really hope that Pascal Siakam can continue to play the way he's playing, and then Fred VanVleet will start hitting shots, it puts you in a conundrum. And they're just, when you watch the way they play, they're not built to play that way. There's only 3 teams who use isolation possessions as a larger share of their offensive touches: Dallas, Philly, and Brooklyn. Those are probably the 3 teams you'd expect, right? Like maybe you would think like Portland or the Clippers would be in there, but those are the 3 teams you would predict. However, Toronto, despite being 4th in ISO frequency, is 28th in efficiency, 0.78 points per ISO possession. Only the Bucks at 0.72. That's a red flag, by the way. And the San Antonio Spurs are worse in that department. They don't have guys that you can trust hit off the dribble jumpers. And I'm not saying those need to be hallmarks of your offense, but you need to have that option. The Raptors don't. They are shooting their effective field goal percentage on pull-up jumpers this year, 39.8. Only the Spurs and the Lakers have lower effective field goal percentages on pull-up jumpers. That's an absolute disaster. And like there are some things that you can envision normalizing. Fred VanVleet shooting under 26% from 3 over these last 11 games. Gary Trent Jr. banged up right now. His shot selection even felt like it was, and he wasn't even like one of their bigger issues then, but OG under 30% from 3 during this stretch. Scotty Barnes been all over the place this season. He will have a game like the Nets where everything seems like it's clicking. The processing speed is up there. He's attacking. Looks like he has great touch. Then he'll just have moments. I mean, like the Sixers, I think it was, I can't remember if it was in overtime, but like he just chucked up like this floater that missed everything. And so there needs to be a level of patience with him because he is in his second year. And so like, I'm not, deboarding the Scotty Barnes bandwagon, but like when you can't count on him to be this supremely net positive player, and then that's on top of just not having enough reliable on ball options in the half court or enough shooting, they're in the bottom 5 of 3-point shooting frequency and accuracy. And that's a whole nother issue. The bench probably been a little bit better than last season when you're looking at the numbers, but not something you could rely on. We have Nick Nurse turning to Malachi Flynn all of a sudden because he's so desperate. And then there's the defensive energy too. Like this is a team where we probably, I think we oversell like the collective need for the like, oh, go ahead and trade for a big, but like the Raptors need a big. The whole like, club 6'7" and 6'9" thing, it might allow you to switch, but Nick Nurse feels like he's like not even trusted that as much. And the Raptors haven't been as good as that. We've seen a lot of lazy closeouts from them. We've even seen them, like their transition defense has been disappointing a lot of the time during this stretch. So I don't know how you look at this team and think, all right, well, they need someone who can end defensive possessions by grabbing boards, but then also help them with their rim protection because they're 28th in rim protection. Opponents are shooting over 70% against them at the rim. And then you look at just like their overall defensive metrics, like they're built to be better than they are on defense. When you look at the season long numbers, they're 15th and 15th per cleaning the glass. It's not like it doesn't paint this dire situation, but the Raptors uh, have like one of the 7 worst location effective field goal percentages allowed for the season. And they've probably actually been a little bit better now that I'm looking at the splits during this stretch where they've just gotten absolutely trucked. But on the season, they've given up like threes, they've given up looks at the rim. So there needs to be like maybe a fundamental change in their defense. Can they afford to be less aggressive at points? Like, could that be something that they could really look at? But yeah, they're 29th in location effective field goal percentage, which is basically what would you expect opponents to shoot based on where you're allowing your shots from. And because they are they allow a bunch of threes and a bunch of looks at the rim, like they are 29th in that category. That's another red flag. So there are so many red flags with this team. What is interesting and what I still do believe is that they feel like they're closer to being able to possibly fix it than, or at least upgrade from the outside rather than just, hey, tear it down. And maybe they do straddle those two lines where it's, or not try to upgrade, but like you could see them moving Fred VanVleet because they don't want to pay him a Gary Trent Jr., but you keep Siakam, Barnes, and uh, OG Anunoby. I think blowing it up would constitute moving Pascal Siakam. And he's probably, I mean, if we did an all NBA ballot right now, he would be on mine, I think. So why are you just going to move him when you have that type of a player? And if you still do believe in Scotty Barnes, I also think there's a misconception where, and, Rome 8180 had pointed this out in our Discord that he disagrees that the Raptors wouldn't move OG Anunoby because couldn't they trade him to get as part of a buy play? And I think he's right in that sense. If I'm missing his point, if his point was something else, I definitely could see them moving him as part of a buy. I think they would strive not to, but are we sure they're going to buy? And then if they're not going to buy, are we even sure that they're going to sell? Like, are they just going to try and float this thing into the offseason? I will say, I think that if they were able to get like a mid-end shot creator to help their half-court offense, it would go a long way. I also think that they don't need to get caught up with, as I was saying before, I think we overestimate how much value size can be sometimes, but I also think we overvalue, like, well, how does this guy match up against Joel Embiid in the playoffs? Worry about that when you actually match up with Joel Embiid. This is all to say I'm not really ready to talk about Raptors teardown trades yet because I can't envision them being there imminently. So I feel like the conversation to be had about, oh, where would they trade Fred VanVleet or where would they trade Pascal Siakam? That has to happen another day. And I don't think they're actually tearing it down unless they do really entertain Pascal Siakam trade talks. He's playing at an all NBA level right now. I think you kind of owe it to your organization to see, like, well, is there anything we could do that's not ultra disruptive to the future to maybe still optimize this team? And it's, can you make a lower end upgrade and see if that injects some life where it's not, oh, Christian Koloko is really our only big that we can lean on. Rashawn Holmes is floating around out there in Sacramento. Can you look at getting another, floor spacing, secondary shot creator? Is Atlanta, knowing that they're in sort of tax dump mode, like why not sniff around John Collins or also like Bogdan Bogdanovic? That's someone who could really help them. I think Bojan Bogdanovic could probably really help the Raptors as well, too. No, he's not going to do anything for their defense at this point, but like you need to address one thing at a time. And maybe is there like a Noel Bogdanovic deal to be hashed out there? They would have to have interest in Gary Trent Jr., and then you have other money going out. I think Eric Gordon is someone who could really help this team. So I think that they have options. Now, do you go out and immediately do that if you see like you can't really right the ship from within? Maybe not, but I still think even if the Raptors tear it down, I've seen too much of OG Anunoby talk in there. Barnes and Anunoby, I imagine, would be the two players that would be close to off limits. I would imagine Barnes is off limits in a non-superstar trade, and that they look at OG Anunoby as, yeah, we're eventually going to have to pay him, but he's still sort of plug and play, and his offensive decision-making can be all over the place. And again, he looks a little bit like sluggish coming back from that adductor injury. But I think that those are the two. If you're rebuilding, those are the two you keep. And so I see all these teams lusting after OG Anunoby. There's a reason why, and which is why I don't think the Raptors would move him. Now, if they were Kevin Durant becomes available again, or if star to be determined that I can't envision is on the trade market and they decide to go out and get him, yeah, I think that OG Anunoby could be on the table. But moving him feels counterintuitive to the rebuild. Just because you have to pay him, that's not scary. He can be movable on his next deal. Like that's just the cap is going up. He could sign his deal like right as that's happening, basically, or just before it's happening. They'll have a better sense of that market, and it's not like he's entering free agency this summer. That's an issue that you have to sort of grapple with. Not sort of. That's an issue you have to grapple with regards to Fred VanVleet, with regards to Gary Trent Jr. It's not that imminent with OG Anunoby. And so I would expect this team to probably ride it out. If I were the Raptors, I'd probably try and see if I could hit like a single or a double as a means to like, okay, we didn't give up any huge equity. So if this doesn't work out, we need to pivot. But I think that there are steps that can be taken specifically to improve the half court offense that doesn't necessarily involve acquiring a superstar. Like, let's just get someone who could hit a pull up jumper. And yeah, that's easier said than done. But again, Bojan Bogdanovic is floating around out there, and he's someone who could help your team. I actually think Bogdan Bogdanovic would be perfect for them. I just don't know how willing the Hawks would be to listen right now, given their aspirations. They'd probably certainly listen for John Collins, especially with Gary Trent Jr. centered around it. That could be a route you go, though. Just hope John Collins helps with your rebounding and then gives you another sort of screening, but also floor spacing outlet in the half court. If you believe that that's something that can open up what you're trying to do. What's odd, though, is that if you trade Gary Trent Jr., you do sort of miss when he's healthy what he would bring. Even if you can be maddened by his shot creation and him taking too many gambles on defense, that type of player, someone else who can put the ball on the floor from the outside in, or is confident enough to take those shots and give you some volume, you kind of need that. And so then getting rid of him and flipping him into a big, you would really have to trust that OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, and Scotty Barnes are going to be the answers for you on the perimeter this season, or that you're going to get more out of like that Otto Porter Jr. is going to stay healthy. You're going to get more of him, or Precious Achiuwa is going to come back and you're going to get more of that from him. I would expect to see him remain patient. Remains to be seen whether that's the right call, but I don't think we're at blow up mode yet. And I want to caution, just because they trade Fred VanVleet, who I think might be him and Gary Trent Jr. the two most likely to be traded, it's the Pascal Siakam future I'm looking at. If they show a willingness to entertain offers, they are blowing it all to hell. And I'll be shocked if, as part of the sell, they wind up moving OG Anunoby. So this is a team that we're probably going to focus on. We'll do our trade deadline previews or primers eventually. And there are a lot of, like, we can get into more nitty gritty targets, but for now, should the Raptors blow it up? I have no idea. I would lean no still. I'm still leaning no. Do I think they're going to blow it up? I ultimately do not think that they're going to go that route.